Dunchbags, what's going on? It's Landon Remixes here, and it's time for a review of the debut album from Ghastly, the Mystifying Oracle. And I'm joined today by Nawtystep, the YouTube's prime source of dubstep and dark electronic music reviews. It's nice to kind of get together finally. We've been talking about doing a collaboration for a little while now. And we had been planning, like, Connor had reached out to me on Twitter about possibly doing a collaboration because he's doing something really cool with his channel right now, just kind of focusing it on bass music and getting really in-depth in ways that I probably couldn't do that. But I really liked his content.
Let's get this right here. This was a proper, like, this was almost like fangirl level moment of like, you know, I wish one day that I can, you know, do a review with Landon Remixes. It'd be so awesome. You know, we've got a really similar way of, you know, listening to and appreciating music. And then Landon just, you know, gets straight back to me and, you know, here we are.
Yeah, no, that's kind of how it was, I guess. It's kind of sort of, but no, it's really exciting.
Not ashamed to say that at all.
I am a big fan of what Connor's doing with his channel. I really enjoy his music, and I think if you guys haven't been introduced to his music already, and you're subscribed to me like primarily for my bass music reviews or like dubstep things, I would definitely suggest checking out his channel because he's got some really cool stuff. So we had talked a little while about possibly reviewing this Ghastly album, and here we are. I guess it's been out for like almost a month now. It's taken a while for us to kind of get here and get time to recording this, but
yeah, I mean obviously the problematic thing is the time zones.
Yeah,
but it's also the fact I think that, you know, we listen to pretty different music, and so having this moment where we were just like, yeah, we're actually going to find some sort of, you know, semblance between what we're listening to and go ahead and review the thing. It's quite cool. It's good that there's some sort of middle meeting point.
No, I'm glad this is finally happening. It's cool to be able to do this. Anyway, though, kind of diving into this album, or really Ghastly in general, he was one of the first, I think, next to like Jaws, Valentino Khan, to really latch onto that bass house formula. And that, I mean, there's always been like heavier stuff, like a heavier side of house. But then like a few years ago, at least, I think it was Valentino Khan's Deep Down Low. That was like the first like bass house song I had ever heard. It was like much like heavier side to it, I guess. And it's like, it fits the vibe of a club, but it's also good for festivals and everything. And it's like, then all the dubstep producers started kind of hopping on that wave. But Ghastly was one of the first, like, I think, new artists who kind of emerged out of nowhere and then started doing this bass house sound. I think the first tune I'd actually heard from Ghastly was either his first one with Jaws. I forget. The song was called Miami Connection.
Genuinely don't think I've heard that song.
Okay, well, it's like it's an older one. It was I think it was the first collaboration they did together. Back in like 2014. So this was like, almost 4 years ago. Kind of. Yeah, crazy.
I mean, you're definitely right in saying that it's generally thought of that those three are the people sort of kick-starting this movement, as it were. And it's like, you know, then with 2015, maybe it's 2014, but Feel the Volume by Jaws.
Yeah. That was probably like one of the first ones too.
Yeah, and that is, you know, not only does it explode Jaws, but it explodes that whole, you know, that whole type of music and our understanding of house as a thing, you know what I mean? It's like, suddenly it has this really dark lens that we can listen to it through.
The whole bass house movement, while I don't necessarily love how the movement has become so saturated as of recently, I think like everyone is way too about it. But I enjoy how it kind of bridged that gap between, because I don't know, when I first started getting into electronic music, there were like the house heads and there were like the bass heads, and there wasn't really an area for those to kind of cross, maybe with the exception of like electro and like what I don't know, Knife Party was doing, I guess, with their electro music.
Yeah,
that kind of helped bridge the gap. But other than that, it was like there wasn't a good middle ground. Then bass house came in, it was like, poof,
it's crazy. It is actually, it's mad how, for me anyway, it's mad how bass house wasn't done years ago, like years and years ago, because it is such like a, when I heard it, when I heard that Jaws track, I was literally just like, honestly, this is incredible, but why, as I said, why hasn't this been done before? It's just literally putting two very well-known types of music together. Because it literally is just like a house beat with dubstep synths, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it was odd that that didn't blow up sooner than it did, but now it has, and I've just gotten really annoyed with a lot of the recent results. But that,
Yeah.
Enough of that aside, Ghastly has always been kind of a standout name for me, and not just because he was one of the first people to kind of pursue down that avenue, but because he had a sound that was very ghetto, I guess. Like, he mixed in a lot of hip-hop elements. His music was always very dark and gritty, and I was always a big fan of that. And it's not like he had a... Really, if you look at Ghastly's discography, it's not like he has a ton of music. But the stuff that he had released, and, like, you know, the remix of, you guessed it, OG Mako, I think it was, I always kind of liked that. And Ghastly, like, caught my attention in that way. I also caught one of his sets pretty early on. It must have been 2016, maybe 2000. Yeah, I think it was.
Oh, what, as in you saw him live?
Yeah, I saw him at like a music festival, and I was just really, I'd say it was probably like the first bass house like set I had ever seen, and I was just really impressed with like how a set like that's able to be so diverse and like feature the dubstep elements and also like the house elements and kind of blend them seamlessly. It was really cool.
100%. I mean, like dubstep is the reason I'm sitting here right now talking to you. But like for me there's nothing that matches the energy of a bass house set. You know, when you go there, it's just, I don't know, it's just another level of, you know, people getting together and jumping, but also experiencing the darkness of the music, if that makes sense. It's not just like straight up, you know, standing there and headbanging. It's like people properly jumping around. I mean, people do that with dubstep, but it's not on the same level where people, you know, got their arms in the air. Like, it's just like, it's got like a vibe and a rhythm to it more than dubstep has. And yeah, I'm just happy that it exists.
Yeah, no, it's really something. That being said, kind of moving forward, I don't think I ever saw Ghastly as the kind of artist that would go forward and do like a full-length album. Even then, it's kind of rare to see like bro step artists or dubstep artists in general kind of putting out full-length LPs. Like, even that Dodge and Fusky album was a little bit of an outlier. Like, that kind of came out of nowhere. I didn't expect to see something like that. And when it comes to bass house artists, that's even more uncommon. Like, I think Ghastly is like the first of like artists to come out of this vein to be putting out a full-length LP. And I know Jaws has one coming out on the way, but that's still not out yet.
Well, I think therein lies your point, in that, you know, OK just released one, Jaws has got one coming out. Is it a management thing? You know, it's like, you know, what was it suggested to him? And then
it could have very well been, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I could make what is essentially 13 bass house tracks. But no, I feel like, you know, he has the people around him doing the similar thing, and he's like, you know what, I'm just going to have a go and try it out. And fair play to him. For me, with this album, I think that's one of the best things about it, is like, I feel it's very commendable for him sticking with that style and just going full throttle with it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think a lot of problems that I've had with many EDM albums that have come in the last couple of years, people are far too about just going for what's trendy, I guess. And a lot of artists like who are popular for a specific style will end up just completely abandoning it, or only having a couple tracks on the album that kind of go for that sound that gave them so much attention to begin with.
Right.
And then just try to do whatever else they can, hop on the dance hall bandwagon, hop on the tropical house bandwagon, or whatever else. And kind of make that happen. So yeah, no, I do agree. It is commendable for him to do this. I guess the final thing is how well does it work as an album? And you know, honestly, I wasn't like super into this album. I'd say there are a few tracks that I really enjoyed out of it, but to me, this album felt more like a compilation of just a bunch of tracks in different styles, and they kind of, for me, didn't really work all that well together.
Yeah,
Like
yeah. I think considering how difficult it is to make an album, I think it's pretty good. I appreciate the vibe of it and the energy that, you know, that runs through it. And as I said, the fact that he sticks with bass house for the most part is commendable. And I don't think it's something that we will see again for a very long time. Moreover, I feel like he's come out with some of his best tracks on this album, notably Rise Up and Everybody. But, however, that isn't to say, I think as you're implying, that there are some parts on this album that really bring it down. Parts where I'm genuinely confused as to how he was satisfied with how it ended up. Not to sound too harsh. But,
no, I get that.
But fundamentally, I think it's a very appropriate representation of where Ghastly is at now as a producer. He has some good songs to his name. He has other songs to his name that aren't as good. And that is what this album is. It's a mix of, you know, good showings of his sound and others which just aren't as good and just aren't as well put together.
No, I think that's a good way to summarize the album for sure. Like, I'm not necessarily hearing anything on this album that is in like a radically different style than anything else I've heard before. Actually, what I want to get into real quick, you know the We Might Fall tune that he did with Matthew Koma a couple years ago? I was expecting that song to end up on this album. I thought it was like the first big single from it, and it was like the one single from like this specific time period in between him just kind of being silent this last year or so, musically. That was like the one song that didn't make it on this, and I was kind of surprised. I wasn't really personally crazy about this track, or that particular one, because I thought it sounded a little bit like, I don't know, it had a lot of potential. I really enjoyed the vocals from Matthew Koma, but also I thought it sounded very amateur for that specific style he was going for.
Yeah, yeah.
Not to say it didn't have enjoyable elements to it, but it wasn't like, you know, the kind of sound he was going for. There are other producers who have kind of done it first and done it better. And
Sure.
He goes for that kind of vibe on a couple different tracks here, kind of going for that more melodic sound. Of course, there's LSD, which has more of like a melodic dubstep flavor. There's I'll Wait, the vocal mix of that, which sounds like it's kind of going for more of like a Porter Robinson Worlds Live kind of aesthetic.
Well, yeah.
Yes, No, Goodbye, he's going for like the future bass kind of stuff going on. And I think that's a good representation of like him kind of trying to experiment outside the bass house world. But most of it, yeah, I would say is like representative of stuff he's, you know, previously done before. It's a good sampler of who Ghastly is as an artist, I guess.
Yeah, 100%. And you know, talking about that Matthew Koma track, for me, it's around that time that, you know, up until then, I've listened to basically everything he's put out, and I've really enjoyed it. And I'm like, wow, this could genuinely be one of my favorite artists. Like all the bass house stuff, you know, the sort of cheeky, sort of, I don't know, not sound design, but the cheeky note placement that he has every now and then, like with tracks like Rise Up in this album. It's just knowing when to speed up particular things and when to keep it normal. And it's just like he has a really good way at points of like keeping his tracks ticking along really nicely, but others where it's just like, you know, you've kind of used that structure already, don't go for it again because we've already kind of heard enough of it.
There were some ones I enjoyed on this, you know?
Tell me which ones
I will tell you which ones I enjoyed. Black Mamba is probably the first on the album that I felt really strongly for. I guess I like the really aggressive synthesizers going on during the drop. Honestly, the track reminded me a little bit of, I know DJ Snake did like an electro track on his album. I forget what it was called, but it reminded me a little bit of that one.
Is it the, it's not the Moxie collaboration by any...
It might be.
Pig Owl?
Yeah. Yeah, that one.
Yeah, it's a banger. That's an absolute
banger. Kind of reminded me a little bit of that one. Except more in like a little bit of a bass house form. The track Don't Give Up I thought was really interesting. It has kind of those classic like deep club house vibes. Reminded me a little bit like the little melody he has going on of like "Show Me Love," Robin S. Classic.
Yeah. Interesting.
So that was kind of going on. I really enjoyed the song "Let Me See You" with Cranked At.
Okay, yeah.
It was funny because the first few times I listened to this album, I was thinking LSD was the song with Cranked At because it's like super melodic, and Cranked At's kind of been in that scene for a while. But it was more "Let Me See You," I guess, was the track that they ended up doing together. And I like how the song has like a more melodic approach, kind of starting out, and you kind of think it's going to go that way, and then kind of the minor chords come in, and it's like, oh shoot, it's going for like a darker sound, and then the drop is like super crazy and like gritty. I think might even be my favorite track on the album, though I will say the vocal kind of throws me off a little bit because it reminds me a lot of the Dora the Explorer theme song, like the lyrics on that.
I never ever thought I would hear someone say that. That's
so it throws me off every time I listen to it because that's all I can picture. But
we're still talking about the Crank That collaboration.
Yeah, Let Me See You.
Man,
if you look at the lyrics, it's like kind of oddly similar. I don't know. It throws me off.
For me, that track, I like the exact opposite things to you.
Really?
I think the intro is incredible. I absolutely love that sort of vocal manipulation thing they've got going on. The drop, I like what they're going for, and you can tell that is very much like both of their styles coming together.
Yeah.
But I don't know, it just doesn't like throw me off my seat.
Like you said, Rise Up is one of your favorites.
Oh,
I will mostly agree with that one. I like the off drop sections, I guess, a lot, and I honestly could have dealt with this track if it had just been like the sections without the drop and kind of like a continuous tech house sound going on. I've liked a lot of Dr. Fresh in the past. I really liked his tune with Sunburn and Sean Frank. New Order, I think it was, that he did a few years ago. But this is actually a really cool song. I like the little bubbly elements that are kind of popping in it. It's really cool.
Man, the sound that they use in the drop. This is a song that I heard in 2015 in a Ghastly mix, and in that mix it goes up to the end of the first drop, and I'm like, oh, just please give me more of it. And now we're three years down the line, like I actually made like a kind of like I made a reminder on my phone for like once every year to remind them of where the hell this track was because it was so good. And then finally, like literally, I think it was last September or October, Ghastly put out a tweet like, in the studio with Dr. Fresh, and I was like, rise up, come on, give it to us now. And then they sent back like a winky face or something like that. And then I knew, I was like, yes, this song is coming. It's coming out in full.
Great.
Yeah, for me, it's an amazing song.
Yeah, no, it's probably one of the standouts for me. The only thing I really have to pick with it is the actual drop, like the section that's intentionally. I thought that the melody was a little boring. I wasn't really super into it. I thought it was kind of like kind of expected.
Yeah, I feel that.
Yeah, and then moving forward, I guess my other favorite on this album would be the "I'll Wait" vocal mix, which I actually prefer decently to the original mix of that song. Yeah, the original mix of the song had like the melodic drop first and the heavy one second and like no vocals. This one has vocals and then it has the heavy drop first and the melodic one second. Though I'm not crazy at all about the kind of out of placeness of the heavy drop. It just kind of comes in like, whoa, that was a little unexpected, and it made it a little bit awkward for me. But then in this particular mix of the song, that makes the melodic drop feel all the more rewarding when it does come in, because you're kind of expecting another nasty heavy drop to come in, and then it's just like, like
yeah, that's good. That's a good.
That's
a very good interpretation of it, or impersonation, I must say. Yeah, I think it's like in saying that, as we were saying, he has that willingness to change things up and bring different styles into his music, which you have to laud him for that. Even though we may not like some of the songs, I think that's bound to happen when you listen to an album. You're going to like some of them, you're going to dislike others, but
Yeah.
the fact that he is willing to kind of go off in different directions, I think you do have to laud him for that.
Yeah, there's definitely some appreciation there. And another thing that I wanted to mention in regards to kind of that and like the different vibes he goes for is that this album ends up feeling a little bit lopsided to me.
Yeah.
Like at least for me, like I said, Black Mamba was the first track on the album that I was really crazy about. But the first two are kind of going for a similar vibe. And I don't know if you've noticed, but if you listen to like just the first three tracks in a row, it's got like the regular like 128 bass house it starts out with, and then has like the first drop, and then it like speeds up, and then has like a 140, 150 BPM like kind of halftime deal going on.
There's a lot of
it's
that.
like super expected because all three of the first tracks do that, and then like you going toward the end of the album, you've got like all the melodic or most of the melodic tracks kind of bunched up together. It's like, instead of trying to space them out really evenly and try to make it flow like that, Ghastly just took all the songs that kind of fit like a similar vibe and then just like clumped them together. And it makes the album feel really, like I said, lopsided to me, and it was difficult.
Yeah,
But,
I feel that. And then also for me, sort of taking into account the fact that those middle 11 tracks are sort of topped and tailed by an introduction and outro that are just... They just lack composure, in my opinion. Like the introduction, that opening, minute or whatever it is, could have been really, drawn out and made completely epic and enduring and whatnot. But he just whilst I do like the drop of the first track, I think it's a very good sort of introduction into what we are, to expect from the album. But like what you were saying earlier, it just comes out of nowhere. And that introduction literally could have been stretched to like 2.5 minutes long. You could have made it really epic. Like he's done that with tracks in the past, and you're just like, wow, that intro was genuinely amazing. But yeah, with the outro as well, it's just like, it's just too short. The introduction to the outro is too short. I was like, come on, just like make it epic. This is the last impression we get of this album. You've done a decent job up until now. And it's like, come on, just like do it justice.
I'd say the last track kind of left me off on a weird note, I guess. It was like, let's try out future bass, and it's like, it's a good, like, nice melodic tone to leave the album on, but it doesn't leave me feeling satisfied. Like this was a good wrap up of what the album's vibe was, because it's not representative of it at all. On the other hand, like you said, Mystifying Oracle, the title track, is kind of like a good representation of what you're going to get on the album, but it could have been so much more. Like the intro is really, really awesome. I like how it's got that spooky vibe that kind of sets up. Yeah, no, I like the intro of it a lot. I don't like the drop. I think it comes completely out of left field, like totally doesn't sound like it matches the track at all. And then like the actual composition of the drop to me just sounds like the most like generic bass house drop, like bass house Ghastly drop you could have put in. And like you said, that does serve to represent like what kind of a general sound you're going to get with the album. But for me, it just kind of standalone, I think it just didn't work, especially because the intro of this song was so enjoyable. I don't know.
Well,
it didn't.
You see, viewers of this video, Landon likes to review, different stuff to me. And so basically the sort of pattern that I'm getting here is that we're liking different parts of the songs entirely, which is actually brilliant. It's fantastic for like discussing the music. But, I don't think I'll ever like that introduction because, as I said, it's too short. I agree, the drop...
No, I would have liked to see it extended. I probably would have liked this track more if it didn't have a drop at all. And it was just kind of setting that vibe, and then we would have just gotten, like, I don't know, Black Mamba right after that or something.
No, that's a great shout. That's a great shout. But, I definitely agree. And, like, I do also agree that the drop comes out of nowhere, and that it is very classic, bass house. It's just pretty standard, but... I kind of appreciate how it comes out of nowhere because you're like, oh, is up until that point, that opening minute, I'm like, oh, is Ghastly going down the whole marshmallow route? Let's make a marshmallow sounding album. Not going to name any names. But no, it just hits you out of nowhere and you're like, wow, okay, now we're talking sort of thing. And for me,
Yeah.
as someone who it's like, you know, I love bass house, for me it's like, up to that point, as I was saying, I was just like, I wasn't sure what I was going to expect. And then, well, you know, that's the statement maker.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I don't know. I think part of the thing that throws it off for me is that it's got something with the EQ on that. It's really odd. Like it's almost like he made this and then like mashed like a different track with it.
Yeah.
Because it's got like, I don't know. I think Mystifying Oracle, like for one, the drop comes in like kind of quiet and it's kind of treble heavy. It's real like a really odd mix together, and it sounds like, I don't know. It sounds like me 5 years ago went into virtual DJ and then just like tried to put two tracks that kind of work together.
Right.
I don't know.
In terms of talking about songs that are just, you know, the components of them don't quite match up or they feel a bit forced together, for me that was Black Mamba, because you get you have the whole sample of, you know, the Black Mamba, this and that, and you know it's trying to, you know, create some sort of scene, but there was no sort of, for me there was nothing organic in the relationship between that vocal sample and the drop. And it was as if, for me, he just put those two together and was like, yeah, I'm going to put them together and see what happens. If it doesn't work, then it doesn't work, but people are still going to listen to it and find it cool because it's got a vocal sample in it. You know, you listen to Centipede by Knife Party.
Oh yeah, no,
and
that's
you are there. It's crawling around you. You know, you can feel it like trickling in and out of your ears, like through your brain and everything. And it's like, it's horrible to listen to. Like, it's so icky.
Yeah.
But with Black Mamba, it's like, you know, I want to feel the snake sort of like enveloping me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I absolutely get that. I totally get. I don't know. Maybe it's just like the break right before the drop, like and then the. I don't know. Something about it just really catches my ear in a really cool way. But I would agree with what you say. I want to talk about a track that I was particularly disappointed with. Not saying it's bad, but that I was just a little,
okay,
you know, like aw with, and that's the Barely Alive collab.
Oh,
and,
don't
I'd
get
say,
me started. Do not. Okay, you say your piece.
Okay, so Barely Alive have, whenever they tend to try out house music, has been like some of my favorites. Like, I know they did a tune on that Ausla worldwide broadcast album. What was it? Back to Back.
Back to Back to Back to Back.
That was one of like my favorite tunes, like period, in that year that came out. So it was like going back into that. They start out the track really nicely, setting it up for like a really nice house drop, and then it's just like, oh, sorry, scrap any thoughts you had to think about that. Throw out any expectations you had in the window because we're gonna give you like a halftime drop. Oh. And I just wasn't into it. And then, like I said, it does that same thing toward the end of the track where it like speeds up. Oh, like get everyone hyped, and then give them another halftime drop, and it's just like, I don't know. And then plus like some of the things I really like about Barely Alive, like the fills and the sound design in those, just didn't really appear in here. Like this couldn't, I don't know. This could have been just like a Ghastly cooked song, and I wouldn't have even known otherwise.
Mate, I was listening to it again last night, and I was thinking, sorry, where actually is Barely Alive on this track? I couldn't I could pick up maybe one sound out of the whole song, however long it is, and I was like, I genuinely like, I couldn't see any sort of input from, you know, is it still two of them, or is it just one of them now? I don't even know, but
I think they're still a duo, from what I understand. Yeah,
but anyway, you know, regardless, it was. I genuinely, how did they come up with that introduction, and then, you know, go into that drop thinking that's what we need to do with it? Like, I was so excited for it as well. I was like, you know.
No, yeah, I was really
because, you know, whenever an album or an EP comes about, I go out of my way to not listen to anything that's released before it, so that when I listen to an EP or an album in full, it's like a completely fresh listen. And I knew that track was there. You know, it's the second one. It's the one after the introductory track for the whole album. It's there to make a statement. What more can I say, really?
Yeah, I don't know. It's just kind of like why'd you have to do that with the drop? Not necessarily saying like coming from just any artist, any particular artist, I would have thought that was like a bad drop. It's just a weird choice for like, given that Barely Alive makes such good bass house when they try it out, and Ghastly's known for that. Why did they go for this? I don't know. It's just like, it could have been so much more, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Like I appreciate when two artists come together and they want to create something completely different, like say VIPs by Skrillex and Must Die.
Yeah.
And that is like or like Chicken Soup even. I mean that's pretty reflective of Skrillex, but I mean still, you know, they can do that, but I mean that was just way too like out there. I was thrown off my seat, but not in the best way, I can tell you that. Like,
oh yeah. So one thing I did want to ask you about is because the track Everybody featuring Sam King, it didn't necessarily, I didn't think it was a bad track, but I don't think it necessarily stood out to me, and you said it was one of your favorite tracks from Ghastly's discography, so I wanted to hear more of what you thought about that.
I think it starts in quite a basic way. I don't think it stands out, sorry, in that respect. But the drop, it's just so cheeky. I just love it. I love the way all the sounds kind of rebound off each other. I love when it speeds up. I mean, the tempo isn't actually speeding up itself, but when he just adds little notes in every now and then to, you know, keep it ticking along even more. Yeah, it's just really easy to like jig and like move along to.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't think the vocal plays too big a part in it. I think it's pretty nondescript, but overall for me, like, you can tell that he really knows that he's onto something when he's speeding up, because when it comes to the second drop and he introduces it with it not how it was in the first drop, but with it more sped up, you know, he's like, yeah, I know I did a good thing there. I'm going to introduce a second drop like that. I'm going to make it extra cheeky for everyone. I don't know. It's just like, yeah, as I said, it has a really nice bounce and swing to it.
Honestly, there wasn't a lot else I really wanted to say to this album. Most of the tracks that I haven't already mentioned, either in a positive or negative way, I just feel kind of indifferent to. I guess, like the Geisha, I think that's how it would be pronounced, Tokyo VIP. Like, honestly, I wasn't really into the drop on this particular VIP. I'd probably prefer the original over that. I appreciate that it's kind of going for a different style than most of the tracks on the album, but I just wasn't that into it. And then really any of the other tracks that I haven't mentioned just didn't really hit me in any particular positive or negative way. I guess it's just like, I felt kind of indifferent, like, okay, it's just kind of there.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that very much shows how a lot of the songs here do just kind of blend into the overall feel of it, which I mean that makes the album what it is. You know, it's a mostly bass house project, and having those tracks in there allows us to say, oh yeah, you know, Ghastly did a bass house album once, and that was cool. But I mean, it's also reflective of the fact that there is just too much of it. With Geisha though, yeah, I hear what you're saying about it being like a nice like direction change, and I think it is a good avenue for the album to be taken down. But I mean, yeah, it's another one of those where I feel like it could have just been built on sort of exponentially with regard to what it actually is.
Yeah, I get what you're saying about the filler tracks kind of just solidifying what the primary genre of this album is supposed to be, which is kind of weird because, you know, like I already mentioned with We Might Fall and everything and kind of the singles building up to this, I expected this album to be less of a like bass house project than it ended up being, and it's like, I'm glad it is in some ways, and in other ways it's like this album might have been better if he would have explored some other avenues more heavily, but I don't know, because this is the final product we ended up getting.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I mean, you do just kind of have to do that with an album. You've got to have some sort of variety to it. I mean, I watched your collab review with Arinthesizer on the the Keizo album.
Yeah.
And that one again, it's just like there's just not enough variety to it. There's so many songs on that thing that just sound way too similar. And you know, it's cool. I really appreciate someone, you know, having a staple sound and really honing in on that. But if you're going to do it across 10 plus tracks, then you're going to have to spice it up a bit.
Just generally speaking, I guess I definitely wouldn't say I hated this album. It's just more I felt like I did with a lot of the tracks on this album, just kind of indifferent to it. There were some tracks that I could really enjoy, especially the ones with like the heavier, more gritty, distorted bass lines, and the kind of tracks that explore that avenue I'm really into, and I can see myself like at some bass house or dubstep show, if these tracks got dropped, I'd be like losing my mind over it. But then there are other tracks that it's just like it would just be like fillers between the high points in like a DJ set to me. So it's like I didn't love this album. I definitely didn't hate it though, I guess.
So I suppose, like, do you sort of, as someone who prefers or is more inclined to listen to stuff that isn't as heavy, do you sort of take from it, therefore, that Ghastly just can't really do that style of music?
What style of music?
As in, like, lighter forms of electronic music, leaning towards stuff that isn't as heavy?
I don't necessarily think so. I mean, like I mentioned with We Might Fall, I think that was a track that had a lot of potential, but just kind of fell shy because that was like I think Ghastly's first time kind of exploring that melodic avenue. I think if he works more at it, just like with Bass House, that he was kind of pursuing that avenue, and he'll just keep getting better with the mixing and being able to understand his own take on it and being able to thrust and add in new elements and things like that. I definitely think Ghastly would be able to do that. And even like a track like LSD, like I really enjoyed the progression on that track. I just thought the kind of lead that he used there was a little bit awkward. And if he kind of continues down that avenue, I think he could be very good in it, But for right now, it's just like obviously him just trying to kind of explore other avenues and see where it goes. And I don't see him kind of giving up on Bass House following this album. I kind of saw that happening before, but not after this album.
Yeah. So do you personally think that you're, I don't know, do you feel excited about his music going forward, or do you think it will kind of go in the same direction as this album has done, or?
I honestly couldn't predict where he's going to go in the future from this, because for a lot of electronic music producers recently, releasing an album has been like the big thing. Like it's the last kind of big hurrah. Like have all these singles over the years and DJ sets and everything, and then there's the album. But I don't know where he could go from here. Like I said, he can explore other avenues and kind of try to do that, or he can like work toward a second album, and I don't know where he'd go, because it's like it's hard for someone in a genre like this to be able to make it an interesting album as it is, and then being able to follow up is going to be even more difficult. So I have no idea what he's going to do from here, like unless he latches on to some other trend that comes in a few years that's like another genre combined with another genre or something. Bass House meets like future bass or something, I don't know.
Hey, it could definitely happen.
It could happen. I don't know. But whatever the next trend is, I guess, I couldn't really predict it. But we'll see what happens. Like I said, I don't see this album as a progression toward anything specific. Like you mentioned at the beginning of this review, it's more just like a nice, solid wrap-up of Ghastly's abilities across the board. Yeah,
exactly. It's got, for me, as I said, it's got some of his best tracks so far, in my opinion, but it also, it's a very good representation of his, sort of inability to live up to that too often, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So it definitely is a good sort of summation of his overall works.
So typically with my reviews, I'll give it a number rating. I don't think you do that on yours, but I will ask you to give it a number rating unless you're really uncomfortable with that.
Okay, very interesting.
Personally, I'm feeling like a light 4 out of 10 for this album. Like I said, not a terrible album, but I felt more indifferent to it than anything, and there were a few disappointing moments that just kind of dragged it down for me. The Barely Alive collab and whatever else, and then of course like the fact that Like we mentioned with all these different artists putting out albums right now, this just feels like a collection. This feels more like a compilation of Ghastly songs than it does like a continuous, solid, purposeful album, I guess, to me. So that kind of makes me feel less than inclined to love it, I suppose.
Fair enough.
But what about you?
Fair enough. See, you're putting me on the spot here, Landon. I don't know. If I was to give it a rating, I think I would go with a solid 5.5. There are parts of it that I don't like. You know, several of them, a multitude, I would probably say. But I think fundamentally, you know, he's gone out there and he said, you know, I have this style and I'm going to work with it and I'm going to, you know, see how it works across 10 plus tracks. And I think that's very commendable. As I said at the start of this review, it really takes something to sort of stick with what you think has worked for you without giving into too many trends, if that makes sense. But yeah, I think if I was concentrating more on the stuff that I didn't like, because it is so present within the album as a whole, you know, that Barely Alive drop, the fact that there is so much bass house in this that sounds really quite similar, then it would be more like the sort of rating that you're giving it. But, you know, for me, it's redeemed by him, you know, going out there and trying to make something that is pretty much completely one style. And yeah, I think it does, there is a way in which it works. I like the energy and the vibe of it from start to finish.
Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this review. It's always fun to be able to do these collaborative reviews, and Connor and I will definitely be working together in the future. God knows what else. It might be the Jaws album, or it might be something totally crazy different. But yeah, if you guys aren't subscribed to him already, definitely throw him a sub. I'll have his channel linked in the end card, as I always do in these collaborative reviews.
Cheers,
definitely
man.
Check out his content if you haven't already. Hope you guys enjoyed this. As always, you can check the Spotify link down in the description below if you haven't heard this album yet, although I'm guessing a lot of you already have, considering how late we're on this. But yeah, you can check that out if you want to. And if you have listened to this album already, let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Anyway, I'm Landon Remixes.
And I'm Nawtystep.
And we'll catch you guys later. Peace.
Safe. Peace out.